No grievance farming. Despite all this grace, it's still the temptation of sinners to complain, murmur, and nurse grudges, which are all ultimately directed at God himself. You need to know that when you complain, you are ultimately complaining against God, because he is the one who allowed it. When you get up in the morning and it frosted and now you're going to be late, God sent the frost. If you have a bad attitude, you have a bad attitude about God. When it doesn't go the way you planned, when there's more traffic than you thought, when somebody rear-ends you, when you've got another doctor's bill, when it's just one thing after another, it can be hard, it can be difficult. But if you're bitter, if you're angry, if you're worked up, you're mad at God. You're mad at God. He sent the hardship. Not one of these hardships is an accident. Nothing shows up and God says, oh, whoops. No. It's all from his fatherly hand. When Israel murmured about the lack of food and water, the thing that was very troubling about it all was that it was all ultimately rebellion against God. That's why that generation died in the wilderness. God said they've been rebelling against me every time they complain. In the name of justice, sinners often plant resentment, spite, and wrath, and then they expect to reap a harvest of righteousness. In the name of justice, sinners often plant spite, wrath, resentment, bitterness, and expect to reap a harvest of righteousness. This is what I mean by no grievance farming. No planting resentment. Not saying, and Christians, of course, can get kind of good at this. I say good in quotes, meaning you hide it. Oh, no, I'm not bitter against my dad. I mean, he was a real jerk for many, many years, and I hate him. But I'm not bitter. I mean, I've been fighting bitterness. I read Jim's booklet, and I've been fighting bitterness. Okay, glad you read Jim's book. Glad you know you're supposed to be fighting bitterness. You're bitter. Christians do that. Like, I'd like to ask for prayer for my kids. They're driving me crazy. I don't know if I can take it anymore. Whoa. Right. I'm just being honest. I'm not bitter or anything. I'm just being honest. No, yeah, right. That's one of the covers. I'm just being honest. I'm just sharing. You're bitter. I mean, what you did was you just opened up your heart and you're like, look, there's a festering wound and it's infected. And I'm a good Christian and I know how to cover it up. But every once in a while I open it up and I rub some mold on it. Just, if that's still there, yeah, I got to remember that. Why do people do that? Because they want justice. Well, he's not apologized yet, but he needs to apologize. Right? I'm ready for him to apologize, and I can forgive him if he ever apologizes. Jerk. But notice that. But there's ways of trying to frame it, and you put a Bible verse over it. Yeah, I'm ready to forgive. Like the pastor says, you have forgiveness ready at the door. Yeah, I got forgiveness ready at the door, and some other things. Right? No, you're bitter. You are grievance farming. You are grievance farming, and you cannot plant those grievances. You cannot plant those things that you're remembering, and you go over in your head and you say, and then she said that, and that hurt me. And he did that, and that was wrong. And you're running it in your head. That's bitterness. That is resentment. That is spite. That is wrath. And that is grievance farming. And you can't plant those things. You cannot plant those things and expect to reap a harvest of righteousness. It says very clearly in Scripture, "Wherefore, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath, for the wrath of man worketh not the righteousness of God." Your wrath cannot fix it. Your wrath only makes it worse. Your wrath is like pouring gasoline on a fire and thinking you're helping. You say, well, I'm not pouring it on. I just have several gallons of it back here just in case. Right. That's toxic.